Mira had always been a diligent worker. She kept her head down, focused on her tasks, and made sure never to mix business with personal life. But all of that changed the day Adrian Blackwood became her new boss. He was the kind of man who commanded attention the moment he walked into a room. Tall, with piercing grey eyes, and an air of confidence that bordered on arrogance, he was both intimidating and intriguing. Their first meeting had been anything but pleasant. Adrian had scrutinized her report with a sharp eye, his questions precise and unwavering. Mira had stood her ground, proving her competence without hesitation. That moment of silent acknowledgement between them had been the first spark of something neither of them could name at the time. Days turned into weeks, and Mira found herself drawn to Adrian in ways she couldn't explain. She told herself it was admiration, respect for his business acumen. But admiration didn't make her heart race whenever he leaned over her desk to point something out. Respect didn't make her stomach flutter when their hands accidentally brushed against each other during meetings. It was an evening in late autumn when everything changed. The office had emptied out, leaving only the two of them working late. The soft glow of Mira's desk lamp cast shadows on the walls as she went over numbers for an upcoming presentation. Adrian had walked in, his tie loosened, looking uncharacteristically tired. Without a word, he sat across from her, watching her work. "You never seem to slow down," he murmured after a long silence. Mira looked up, surprised by the softness in his tone. "Neither do you." A ghost of a smile played on his lips. "Touché." For a moment, the silence between them wasn't heavy with the weight of work, but something else, something unspoken yet undeniably present. He studied her, his gaze lingering a little too long. Mira felt warmth creep up her neck. "I admire your dedication," he finally said, his voice quieter now. "You challenge me, and I like that." Mira swallowed hard. Thank you." She wanted to say more, but her words failed her. Adrian seemed to sense it, because he stood up, walking around the desk until he was beside her chair. He reached down, tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear, and Mira's breath hitched. It was the gentlest of touches, yet it sent a shiver down her spine. "This is dangerous," he said softly. Mira looked up at him, her heart hammering. "I know." Yet neither of them moved away. The next few weeks were a delicate dance. They stole glances across the conference room, brushed fingers when passing documents, and lingered in the elevator just a moment too long. They never spoke of that night in her office, but it had changed everything. It wasn't until the company retreat that the tension finally broke. A weekend away from the city, surrounded by the vast openness of the mountains, stripped away the constraints of their usual environment. That first evening, after a long day of team activities, Mira had stepped outside for some fresh air. She found Adrian already there, leaning against the wooden railing of the lodge's balcony. "You avoiding me?" he asked without turning around. Mira hesitated before walking up beside him. Number just, trying to be careful. Adrian finally turned his head to look at her. "I don't want to be careful with you." Her breath caught. "Adrian." "I know the risks," he interrupted. "I know what it could mean for both of us. But I also know that every time you walk into a room, I notice. Every time you speak, I listen. And every time you look at me, Mira, I feel it." She closed her eyes for a moment, willing herself to think rationally. But when she opened them, he was still there, waiting. So she did the only thing she could. She kissed him. It started slow, tentative, as if both of them were testing the waters. But the moment Adrian's hand slid to the small of her back, pulling her closer, It deepened. The world around them faded, leaving only the warmth of his touch, the taste of him, the quiet hum of something inevitable. The retreat ended, and they returned to the reality of their office lives. But now, there were stolen nights and whispered conversations. They found solace in the secrecy, the stolen moments that felt like their own little world, away from prying eyes. Yet, reality had a way of catching up. A rumor started to spread, a whisper in the hallways, knowing glances exchanged in meetings. Mira's chest tightened with anxiety, fearing what would happen if they were exposed. Adrian noticed her unease and took her hand in his office one evening, his grip firm yet reassuring. "We can't keep hiding," he said. Mira searched his face. "What do we do?" He exhaled slowly before giving her a small smile. "We face it, together." The next morning, Adrian walked into the office with purpose. In the middle of a department meeting, he addressed the whispers head-on. With steady confidence, he made it clear that his feelings for Mira were real, that there was no favoritism, and that their work would remain professional. Mira had never admired him more than in that moment. Some disapproved, but many respected his honesty. The storm passed, and in its place, something steadier, something real took its place. Their love was no longer a secret, but a story unfolding in the open. Years later, when Mira walked down the aisle towards Adrian, she thought back to that first meeting. The sharp words, the unspoken challenge. She had never imagined that her stern, commanding boss would one day be the man waiting for her at the end of the aisle. His grey eyes filled with nothing but love for her. But love had a way of surprising even the most careful of hearts. Their journey had been far from easy. There had been obstacles, moments of doubt, and outside pressures that threatened to tear them apart. Yet through it all, their connection had only grown stronger. As they exchanged vows, Mira realized that love wasn't about playing it safe. It was about taking risks, embracing the unknown, and choosing each other again and again, no matter the challenges that lay ahead.